Security VIP is the official podcast of the security industry, from manufacturers to end users and everything in between. Security VIP is your home for nothing but the truth.
You think you know me?
On this day, I see clear. You're listening to the Security VIP podcast, hosted by Taylor May, the official podcast of the security industry and home of nothing but the truth. Kicking off season 3 of Security VIP, we feature the manager of security of Regional 1 Health, Daniel Henderson. Get ready for nothing but the truth.
Security VIP Nation, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Security VIP podcast, the official podcast of the security industry, and your home for nothing but the truth. As always, I'm your host, Taylor May. And on today's episode, we are kicking off season 3 of Security VIP with the manager of security for Regional 1 Health, Mr. Daniel Henderson. Daniel, welcome to Security VIP, brother. How are we doing today?
Man, I'm great, man. I appreciate you having me today.
Awesome, man. And Dan and I were joking earlier before we kicked this off live because he's wearing one of my favorite colors. As most people know, I played football at Oklahoma State University, so he is representing that bright orange. So Daniel, I respect that, brother. Much appreciated.
Hey, man, I'm happy to put it on.
Awesome, man. Well, you are quite a very special individual. You also got an award recently, 40 under 40 elite professional. So huge congratulations to you on that sector. And I think we were talking about this earlier too, before we kick this off live. As I told you, I don't have really a lot of healthcare professionals on my podcast just because I'm not an expert in this swim lane, but we have to talk about this more, especially with everything going on still with COVID and the pandemic and things of that nature. But Daniel, why don't you give us a background about yourself, your experience, and kind of what you bring to the industry?
Yeah, no problem. So, of course, I've been in healthcare security for it'll be 16 years this year. I'm celebrating my 4th year with Regional 1 Health as a full-time employee. Prior to that, I was a contract employee. I started contract security with Guardsmark LLC. It was owned by the late Ira Libman, one of the big dogs in security realm all over. I just thought this was temporary. I tell everybody, when I started this journey, I'm a computer nerd, man. I played football. I busted my knee in high school, so I got into computers, and I went to a couple of schools to get my education. I ended up getting my associate from ITT Technical Institute in computer networking, and I ran for about 5 years my own computer repair business, where I would take people's devices and repair them for them and do a little consulting. I thought that was the road I was going down, and someone said, man, you should do security. So in 2006, I joined Guardsmark, and I worked at a couple of places. I worked at FedEx. I worked at Nike for the contract company, but my home was always Regional 1. I've been at Regional 1 since July of 2006, and it was, in the beginning, I didn't take it seriously. I always had that Paul Block mentality. Me and my friends were going to go out for the local law enforcement here in Memphis. Memphis Police Department made it as far as the physical, and I had a growth on my lung, and it kind of counted me out. And it's kind of still being monitored now, but yeah, it counted me out of a lot of things because of that growth. I have no idea what it is. The doctor really couldn't explain it to me. And it was kind of funny to me because I was like, how is that affecting me? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do?
Right.
Tried to spearhead into the IT field, and kind of hit a bump in the road. I did a lot of contract jobs around the city and the state, traveling, going and do some access points installation and some networking contract work, but nothing ever really stuck. So one of my mentors, Larry Robertson and Robert Montague, who was at that time, the account manager for the Med at the time before it became Regional 1 Health. And he was like, man, you should really take this a little more seriously. Like there's a huge vertical market for healthcare security. And with my IT background and the way security systems are going, it it kind of meshed well together. Had an opportunity to grow my skill set as a leader, but also grow my skill set from a technology standpoint, because I became the say all at the organization for what new technology for security would be implemented. So yeah, that's about it about me. As you said, I won the 40 under 40 Urban Elite Professional here in Memphis, presented by Cynthia Daniels. And man, I can tell you, it wasn't until maybe a couple of weeks ago that I realized that I really wanted an award. The award sits on my mantle at home, and it's a staple of an accomplishment that I got for doing what I do on a daily basis naturally. And it's always a good thing to be recognized, but it is hard to remain humble when you're recognized. So I most definitely try to keep myself grounded,
Right.
and remember that I'm still a student in this game. I'm still learning. So
Dude, man, I love that. And some of those characteristics that you just spoke about and some of that award that you just won, that character kind of component of you comes from, you and I know this is football, man. I mean, they teach you that in the game of football, and to humble
right.
yourself, to ground yourself, and, have your moments to celebrate when you do win, you do achieve things. But I love that, man. And speaking of just, football, real quick, what position did you play again, Daniel?
So I played lineman. I played left tackle, and I played right tackle for a while.
Awesome. So yeah, so most people I know I played defensive end. So Dan and I would have to go against each other, unfortunately. But I'm sure Dan, you were a hell of a lineman, man, back in the day.
Man, I was quick on my feet. I still surprise people today when I take off running here. So
I don't doubt it, man. Again, thank you for the backstory, man, and I'm glad to hear. It's actually an honor to speak with you, man, because obviously you got that award. You had a little health with your lung thing, so I'm hoping that will obviously go away. You continue to stay healthy, still need to take charge, but also good to hear your path and transition to take this role more seriously in the healthcare sector, because we need people like you, man. We need people on the front line leading the charge when it comes from a security perspective. So, what do you think is the biggest, threat in healthcare security right now?
Man, being honest, man, workplace violence is a true thing, and it's always been prevalent in healthcare. It's getting more noticeable now because, of course, COVID. People are at home, and they're able to see it. But man, workplace violence is a true thing. Threats of active shooter, threats of physical violence, verbal violence. It is happening within our healthcare organizations all across the country.
Yeah, workplace violence. I mean, it's just not only in healthcare, man. You see that in other industries too, even retail, also, as well as gaming sector. I mean, it's just unfortunate you see those challenges continue to happen. What do you think? I guess in healthcare, man, how do you overcome those challenges, and what's the solution for that right now?
So the first step to overcome any challenge is to being able to have that conversation and speak nothing but the truth.
Hey,
um,
there we
letting
go.
letting people know what's going on and being honest with them. A lot of times, we as professionals, we try to sugarcoat things to make people comfortable with, and we think it's crisis management, but it's not managing the crisis. It's only blanketing the crisis while it gets larger in the background. And then when it comes to the forefront, it's so bad off that you only have time to react instead of being proactive to it.
Man, this is why I have Daniel on my podcast, guys, because he just referred to my mantra, but he also talked about that reactive versus proactive mindset. We don't see that enough. Speaking the truth is one thing, and being transparent is one thing, but then taking that next step to be proactive, to put the right policies, the procedures, technologies, SOP plan to prevent and mitigate, and at least, I hate to say it, but cover your ass essentially for these events. I mean, that's going to put you in the best position for success. So, Daniel, I really appreciate that aspect. And let's talk about more of the healthcare sector, because I hate talking about this, dude, and I'm sure you're sick of it too. But you guys are on the front line with COVID-19 and the pandemic. Unfortunately, it's still, it's still around us. I wouldn't say it's a big talking point, because I think most people are just sick of it, seeing it on the news. But since COVID-19 happened back in 2020, the early stages of it, what are some things that you guys have done at Regional One Health to, one, mitigate the spread of it, two, protect your employees and staff? What are some of those technology procedures you guys put in place?
So for one, access control became a big talking point, not just for this organization, but for many organizations. Identifying areas of entry that didn't have a person there to screen, or how people got into your facility. You will find in healthcare organizations, even healthcare workers were avoiding the screening process. When this all started, everyone had to be screened, their temperature had to be checked, questions had to be asked, and we found often that employees would go into back doors that they had access to and sneak around to get around from being screened. So one of the biggest things we did, of course, we activated our incident command and we created all these subcommittees to talk about lockdown, access control, how people are getting in, where they're getting in. Is there a need for everybody to have access to these doors at which location? Getting the support from our executive leadership on locking down a facility, like, being able to tell a physician, no, you can't come in this way. We're locking down the access. You have to come in through the front way. If you have an emergency, I advise you to walk faster. Was one of the solutions that we came up with. Another solution was communicating to people how serious this was. I caught COVID 2020 in July, at the end of July, right after my birthday. We got back from Vegas while I was at work, started feeling bad and had COVID and was out physically from work for 6 months.
Wow.
To show dedication, I guess that's that football in me. I was working from a hospital bed because I just wanted to make sure things were still running smoothly and being able to provide a service to people, because that's just who I am. That's what's in my
Love
heart.
that, dude. I love that, man.
So we've also installed some temporal readers around the campus. Some of them you can it asks you questions. Have you been around anybody with COVID within the last 48 hours, last 14 days? And those questions, if you answer it correctly, you'll get a pass that says that you passed the COVID screening questions. All those things that were put in place to assist. We hired a bunch of screeners. Screeners became a position. So we hired a bunch of people to take temperatures throughout the day to keep our campus safe. We restricted a lot of visitation. We took it down to maybe one visitor per day. And it's truly a control mechanism to control the spread of this virus that we don't know much about. And seems like every day we learn something new. So,
And a lot of good talking points right there that you mentioned. And what I love the most is everything you said was from a holistic lens. You're not relying on one single solution to solve all your problems, which is what I preach about all the time here in the industry, is having that holistic perspective and putting those proactive methodologies in place. But what I love the most, what you just told me, Daniel, is you're in a hospital bed and you're still taking the initiative to make sure that Regional One Health is safe and secure. I mean, dude, there's rare people like that in the space. And maybe it's just the athlete, because most athletes, when they get to the professional world, they're pretty successful and they already have that drive and mentality, and it's kind of in their DNA. And I'm kind of the same way, dude. My wife and I caught COVID over Thanksgiving, and horrible headache, high fever, and I'm on a call trying to get a proposal done with one of my colleagues. I'm just like, you know what, that's just kind of the initiative that we take as, I guess, former athletes, being in kind of the professional world. But some things you also talked about, access control is a huge standing point there. You got to be able to lock down when you need to lock down when it comes to those threats like workplace violence, but also the screening mechanisms. And Daniel, this has been a talking point right when COVID came out about thermal and fever detections, and all these crazy technologies came out. What is your thoughts on that? Because, man, here in the security industry, a lot of people have a lot of mixed views around thermal cameras and fever devices. And I mean, I'm glad that you guys have a person screening with that device or solution. But what are your honest thoughts about how accurate these are when it comes to identifying someone with the high temperature?
With my technology background, man, it's easy to say. Maybe 50% of the time, technology will fail you. And when it fails you, what's the backup plan? When I was in Vegas, I think the first time I saw a thermal detection was in Vegas. We were at the Flamingo Hotel. They have it. You have to walk up, stop, let it take your temperature, and it gauges your temperature. And I want to say, because Everywhere I go, I look at how the security operates. Um, my wife had a thermometer in her bag, and I took my temperature orally, and it was off by a couple of points. It's so many factors. My feelings is, use what works for you. Don't use it because it's shiny and new. Whatever is best for your organization or your place of business, utilize that. A lot of times, and we have to be careful in the security sector where we try to make people comfortable. And I don't, security is not about you being comfortable. It's about us being safe. And if we're going to fight against a threat, whether it's COVID-19 or actual human being with a weapon, we have to utilize those tools and those resources that are out there that will sometimes make us uncomfortable. It may not be aesthetically correct for customers. They may not like it, or they may not like the way that it looks. And I don't care how you dress it up, but safety is compromised when you compromise it for others. So when it comes to that thermal detection, it's how good is the device that you paid $100,000 for when you probably could have just put a body there with a $40 monitor, $40 thermometer to do that same thing. So
Yeah, dude, you're 100% spot on. I mean, I see that all the time now, and that was like the biggest issue I had with those devices. A lot of snake oil salespeople would come out with those devices just for a quick sale or a quick dollar, and just kind of put some turmoil around new technology essentially. But I love to hear that, man. And I guess a challenge that I see the most happen, and you probably go this too, is sometimes politics get in the way of security decisions, or someone's
right,
political belief get instead of security decisions. So I think some of the things in the healthcare sector is obviously HIPAA, right? You have to abide by HIPAA. So
right.
however you kind of manage that persona around making sure that you are safe and secure at Regional One Health, and making sure the other people that might have an opposing view are in that same swim lane, or making sure they're happy as well. How do you kind of balance that?
So as you said, a lot of things are political. The biggest thing to operating a security department, and it's a support system. I have a director who supports decisions and helps find the truth. My former director was the same way, Robert Montague, as I mentioned him earlier. It's knowing how to say it, knowing how to present it where it doesn't look as bad, and making sure your processes are tight enough and that the execution of those processes are in place. So to play that politics game and make people comfortable is giving them the whole picture. Hey, listen, if we don't do this is what could happen. If we make this happen, this is what we have to do, and give those options. You always give a choice and a consequence. Here are your choices. Here are the consequences on each choice. Here's the failures that can happen in each choice. We looked at both, and sometimes you choose the worst. You choose the best of the worst or the lesser evil, so to speak. You can't 100% solve certain problems in organizations because of um, some people's standings. But the best thing you can do is if gain the confidence of your leaders, your executive team, your staff, that you are making the right decision for the organization every time. And stand by your decision. I've seen a lot of people make a decision, and the plan fails, and they buckle on there and look for a scapegoat. But for me, if I made a decision, I stand by that decision 110%, even in the failure, because now here's a lesson I've learned. All right, I learned from this one. This is why this didn't work. Let's get back up, dust ourselves off, and get ready for the next snap, because we can't keep talking about this problem, right? So that, I think that's the best way to play the politics game, is you understand that when you make a decision, you stand behind that decision. When you buckle, people lose confidence. And when people lose confidence, you lose the backing of the people you need the most to make something happen.
Spot on, man. You're dropping the mic on me. You're treating every day like game day, dude. You're getting me all fired up to go out and hit the field, man. Because you're exactly right, dude. I treat every day like game day. I'm on the because I do sales for a living, so I trick it out as that. But dude, I love that, man, because every single person, Daniel, that I've had on my podcast, they all say the same thing that you just told me. They said, I have a good leadership team that supports and trusts my decisions to bring cutting edge technology, to bring policies and procedures to make sure that our environment is safe and secure at all times. They essentially, what I call that is they let you do your job. They stay in their lane and let you do your job effectively because that is what they hired you for. So anytime you have an executive leadership team that does that for you and they have the trust and ability to implement those technologies with your recommendation, that's huge, man. So I wish more people were like you, especially in the hospital sector, because I don't think we have enough of that right now. And hopefully you'll be a pioneer, man, for us moving forward.
Hey man, hope so. Hope so. We'll march arm in arm to make this thing happen.
That's good, man. Because I know you and Brian Hamilton, he has a great podcast too in this sector. So I know you guys are doing some great things on the healthcare side. But as we wrap up here, Daniel, last couple of questions, man. You are a leader, you are a professional in this healthcare sector. You talked about those challenges and kind of lessons learned throughout your sector. What is like one piece of advice you would give someone new in your position that you wish you would have had, 10 years ago, 5 years ago? What's that piece of recommendation?
Be a student. Uh, you may be a expert in some things, but you're not an expert in all things. And that's in any realm of security vertical markets. You want to learn what every one role is, how it operates, because you can't protect what you don't understand. So the best thing to do is be a constant student to the game. There are people out here who have innovative ideas. They have uh, software. They have things that they're offering. Um, Learn how your organization works, so you'll know what is the best option for you and everyone else. The biggest advice is being a student, staying in the game. You won't get it all right. You don't know it all. I don't consider myself an expert. I consider myself an advanced learner. I'm an advanced learner, and I'm still learning. The day I hit professor status probably be the day I retire.
Dude, I love that, man. Be a student, because that's what they always taught us in football, right? You're a student athlete first. Student comes first, because athletics don't last forever. So what's that backdrop, right? What's that?
Right.
What do you have next? Awesome advice, man. I really appreciate that. And I guess my last and final question, Daniel, is just kind of a broad question. Doesn't really need to be specific or not, but I guess from my own knowledge and my own awareness, I mean, how do we bring more education and knowledge to the healthcare sector when it comes to security challenges? Like, what's the platform for that? How do we get more awareness towards what you guys are doing?
One of the biggest things is people have to be willing to have the conversation about what goes on in the healthcare sector. As I said at the beginning, we talked about workplace violence. Um, Healthcare is a dangerous environment, and it can be even more so dangerous. People, we really have to take mental health more seriously. We have ignored it, and now we're seeing splashes of mental health issues in all sectors. We see it in the NFL with the Antonio Brown incident. We
Right.
see it with the active shooters and other situations that are happening around the country. So, I think we ignore mental health here at Regional One Health. We often see a lot of people who are going through a mental health crisis, and we think that it'll never happen to us, but we all go through crisis, and we all face them differently, and everybody response is not the same. Sometimes our beliefs and we allow our status to prevent us from engaging. The best thing to bring more awareness to how the safety and security in healthcare area is to speak to a nurse, speak to a EVS tech, speak to the facilities personnel who walk these halls on a daily basis and can tell you that, hey, listen, it's not easy to work in healthcare. A lot of people look at our jobs and assume that we know or don't know, or we're overreacting. I hear people say all the time, "Oh, you're a nurse, or you just work security in a hospital," but it is a challenging environment. I've had law enforcement officers tell me personally, especially when I was just a lieutenant, "Hey, I couldn't do your job. You guys didn't have enough around you for me to do this. When you drop off a psych patient who is hearing voices and seeing people, and they're 6'3", 345 pounds, and
Mhm.
they're ready to fight. it is a dangerous environment, and a lot of us are getting burnt out. You know, a lot of nurses I've talked to are looking at leaving this career field altogether because of the burnout and the feeling of not feeling safe. You know, in all of the security realm, we are really operating off the perception of safety. You know, no matter what you do, if people perception is not that they're not safe, that's the reality. So it's trying to figure out how to work within people's perception while changing it through active work processes, training, communication, conversations. Man, you got to have those conversations, those truthful conversations, not just telling people what they want to hear, but truthful conversations about the possibility of what could happen, what to do in those situations, because no plan is perfect until you're able to execute it. That's it.
Man, you're preaching today, dude. I mean, it starts with a conversation, and something I always kind of relate this back to is I had a podcast episode with a couple professionals in the K through 12 sector, and they all talked about mental health and how serious that is for students right now. And I think you've seen that across the nation with students protesting and active shootings happening and lawsuits happening. And what they all told me is that, Taylor, we have to put more efforts and funding towards mental health, but we also have to establish that culture where everyone
Right.
feels welcome and has that positive experience to go learn in that environment. And that's the thing too. Like you hit the nail on the head. Perception is reality. You would never think something would happen at a hospital or a healthcare sector where you're supposed to get help and support and treatment and everything. You shouldn't have to worry about safety and security, right? That's the perception of the average, patient that comes in there. And the same thing for school. When a student goes to school, I mean, they shouldn't have to worry about some other person blowing up the school or making a bomb threat or do a shooting or whatever it may be. But unfortunately, it takes special people like yourselves to make sure that we create that perception as a safe and kind of that culture aspect to make sure everyone feels on the same page. So, dude, I love that, man. A lot of good advice right there. And Daniel, I guess, normally as I wrap up my episodes, I usually ask for contact information, but the last thing you probably need is a bunch of vendors calling you and say, hey, man, I want to sell you the latest and greatest. I already heard your phone go off in the background, so I'm sure that was probably a vendor blowing you up with their latest and greatest. But if people want to get more involved with you, Daniel, I ask you a couple questions. Just get advice, because I think you have a lot of advice. And I'm kind of containing this into like a 30-minute episode, but how can they get more involved with you, dude?
Hey man, connect with me on LinkedIn. Taylor knows, you connect with me, I will respond. It may take me a little while, but connect with me on LinkedIn and we can share information. I will provide some contact information and where you can reach me. I'm not gonna put my phone number out on here, but if you really want to get in contact with me, connect with me on LinkedIn, reach out, ask those questions. If you just want me to ask a question for some work you're doing for your dissertation, I'm all for it. If I don't like to do anything, I like to share the knowledge that I have, because I believe that we all have to get into the habit of sharing information with one another so that we can be better at what we do.
Love it, dude. LinkedIn, everyone. If you want to get involved with more with Daniel Henderson, follow him on LinkedIn. He's the manager of security for Regional One Health and also recipient of the 40 under 40 Elite Professional Role and Award. So, Daniel, thank you again, brother, for hopping on. And we'll make sure to put you on another episode too. I might have another panel discussion in the healthcare sector, and definitely want to have you included on that, man. So, thank you again for the time. And for those that have questions, comments, or concerns, you can email me at info@securityvip.net. Once again, that email is info@securityvip.net. You can watch this episode of Daniel and I on YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify when you're on the road. And for all the latest updates and announcements about Security VIP, make sure to hit that follow button on LinkedIn. Catch you guys on the next one, and stay safe out there. Gotta recognize